All right, let's dive straight into this explainer and transport ourselves all the way back to the winter of 1872, specifically December 5th. I want you to picture the scene. A merchant ship is making its way across the vast, freezing expanse of the Atlantic when the crew suddenly spots another vessel way off in the distance. But, something is immediately off. The ship is just kind of drifting aimlessly, nobody is at the helm, and when they finally manage to pull up alongside her, they realize this isn't just a ship that's lost its way. It's the Mary Celeste. And as they watch it bobbing in the waves, they're literally looking at the genesis of one of the absolute greatest maritime mysteries in human history.
So when those merchant sailors eventually clambered aboard the Mary Celeste, they fully expected to find, well, a catastrophe, right? But instead, they found a ship that looked perfectly fine. I mean, its sails were still raised, catching the wind exactly like they were meant to. The structure was completely sound, no severe damage to the hull, the masts were intact. But what immediately struck the boarding party was the heavy, spooky silence. There were absolutely no signs of violence, none. The ship hadn't been ransacked, it hadn't been torn apart by some rogue storm, it was just eerily, unnaturally quiet. And as they went deeper into the ship, the mystery only compounded. There was absolutely no blood anywhere on the decks or down in the cabins. If your mind goes straight to a pirate attack, which, let's be honest, makes sense for the 1800s, well, there was zero evidence of that. No cutlasses drawn, no signs of some desperate struggle between the crew and mysterious attackers. The wood was clean, everything was totally undisturbed. Honestly, it was as if time had simply paused right in the middle of a perfectly ordinary day out on the ocean.
Which brings us to the absolute most chilling detail of the whole shebang. There were no bodies. The captain, his wife, their young daughter, and 7 seasoned crew members had completely vanished without a single trace. 10 people, just swallowed by the sea, leaving behind a perfectly functional ship. It's this massive puzzle that has haunted historians, sailors, and investigators for over 150 years. I mean, how does an entire crew just evaporate into thin air?
To really grasp how baffling this is, we gotta look at how it all started. Section 1, a normal voyage begins, setting sail from New York. Okay, so on November 7th, 1872, the Mary Celeste departs New York Harbor. Everything is completely routine. Her destination is Genoa, Italy. On board, we've got Captain Benjamin Briggs, his family, and 7 highly experienced sailors. Through mid-November, as far as anyone knows, the ship sails peacefully toward Europe. Everything seems totally normal as the vessel disappears over the horizon. No one standing on the docks in New York could have ever imagined they were watching these folks sail directly into a permanent historical mystery. And then, bam, we jump to December 5th, 1872, when the ship is found drifting, completely abandoned. Now, right here is an absolutely crucial detail we can't gloss over. The cargo. 1,700. That's the number of barrels of highly volatile industrial alcohol the ship was carrying in its hold. You see, this wasn't a passenger ship, it was a working merchant vessel, and its payload was basically highly combustible fuel. Keep that specific detail tucked away in the back of your mind, because it becomes incredibly vital as we try to piece together what might have happened out there in the mid-Atlantic. Section 2, the eerie silent scene, boarding the ghost ship. So nearly a month after the Mary Celeste leaves New York, a ship called the Dei Gratia spots her drifting. The crew of the Dei Gratia lowers a boat and rows over, fully expecting to, offer assistance to a stranded crew. But when they board, the scariest part of the mystery isn't actually what they found. It's what was missing. That cargo of industrial alcohol we just talked about, almost completely untouched. Down in the galley, there was food just sitting on the table, literally like someone was just about to sit down and eat. The crew's personal belongings, their clothes, their pipes, even their money and valuables, all perfectly undisturbed inside their cabins. But the ship's only lifeboat? Gone, along with every single person aboard. It is the specific combination of what was left behind versus what was missing that makes this whole thing so incredibly confusing.
Faced with this pristine but entirely empty crime scene, people have been scratching their heads for a long time. Section 3, Theories and Speculation, 150 years of guesses. Let's break down some of the most prominent theories that have floated around. First up, a leak from the alcohol cargo causing a massive panic. Second, kind of related to that, an overwhelming fear of an imminent explosion. Then you've got your classic maritime fears, a pirate attack, or maybe a giant, unexpected rogue wave sweeping everyone right off the deck. Some folks even suspected a violent mutiny among the crew.
And of course, whenever you have an unsolved mystery of this magnitude, you inevitably get people throwing out paranormal forces. Aliens, sea monsters, the works. But here is the massive problem with pretty much all of these theories. None of them perfectly explains every single piece of evidence left behind. Think about it. Pirates absolutely would have taken the valuables and cargo. A mutiny? That would definitely leave signs of violence or blood. A giant wave wouldn't explain why the lifeboat was the only thing missing while the sails were still perfectly raised and the food was totally undisturbed on the table. The math simply doesn't add up for most of these guesses. And that brings us to the most likely modern explanation, a tragic miscalculation. Modern investigation has actually pieced together a highly plausible but incredibly agonizing sequence of events. Step 1. The crew, sailing along, suddenly hears strange noises, maybe deep rumblings or pressure releasing, coming directly from that highly volatile industrial alcohol cargo down in the hold. Step 2. Knowing exactly how dangerous that cargo is and fearing an imminent, catastrophic explosion, Captain Briggs gives the frantic order to abandon ship. They mistakenly abandon a perfectly safe, floating vessel and pack themselves into that small, vulnerable lifeboat, probably tying a line to the main ship to just trail behind it until they think the danger is past. But then, step 3, rough seas roll in. The connection between that tiny lifeboat and the massive Mary Celeste is severed, snap. Once that line breaks, the lifeboat is totally at the mercy of the Atlantic. The heavy Mary Celeste just keeps sailing away with the wind, separating them from their only sanctuary forever. It is widely believed now that a terrifying but ultimately harmless sound led to a panicked evacuation. The crew perished in those rough seas, while their empty ship just kept on drifting.
The Mary Celeste kept floating, essentially acting as this untouched time capsule waiting to be discovered by the De Gratia nearly a whole month later. And it brings us back to this really haunting thought, because sometimes the scariest mystery isn't what was found, it's who was missing. The absolute pristine condition of the ship is exactly what makes the total absence of its crew so incredibly loud. So we are left with the ultimate question. What really happened out there? Was it, as modern researchers suspect, a deeply tragic, entirely preventable mistake driven by sheer panic? Was it some bizarre natural disaster we just can't fully conceptualize? Or does it remain one of the greatest maritime mysteries ever recorded, with pieces of the puzzle we haven't even realized are missing yet? The truth is, we may never know for absolute certain what occurred in those final, frantic moments. We're left to forever wonder what exactly prompted an experienced captain and his crew to step off that perfectly safe, sturdy deck and straight into the dark, freezing unknown of the ocean.